This video presentation will be covering textbook 1, chapter 2, and we are going to start off by discussing the media as a source of delinquency misinformation. So the media has a big impact on delinquency. Youths commit crimes ranging from status offenses to vandalism to even murder. Many of these delinquencies are oftentimes recorded by the criminal or by a friend and are posted onto social media sites. The problem of delinquency is always getting attention from the media, and much of which is reported on news outlets are pretty much very selective. More serious offenses obviously gain more attention, so they are the ones that are usually reported on, but only 7 to 10% of delinquents are chronic and violent offenders.
Juvenile delinquency data. Data is collected to better understand juvenile delinquency. Having accurate and up-to-date information helps sociologists better understand the causes and the possible steps that can be taken to prevent such delinquent acts. Validity and reliability. The methods and procedures used to collect data can also determine the usefulness of the findings. Sources like the Unified Crime Report are useful but cannot account for every delinquent act, seeing as some of those offenses go unreported for various reasons. Validity and reliability are two concepts that help us determine some of the problems in the research used to understand juvenile delinquency. Validity. A measure has a validity when it measures what it is supposed to measure. A finding is valid when it reflects factual evidence. Validity can be affected by factors such as the subject's withholding or understating information, the investigator indicating in some way what response he or she wants to hear, or a sample not equally including all juvenile delinquents. Reliability. Reliability is when a measure yields the same results when repeating the measuring procedure. When testing the reliability of a study or finding, it is important to replicate the measuring procedure as closely as possible. Reliability and validity are related and both benefit from straightforward answers and the subjects being selected in the same way each time.
Hi, my name is Karina Adamian. This is for Sociology 348, Textbook 1, Chapter 2. My summary is about official sources of delinquency information. The United States has two main sources that are a part of the federal government, which record criminal activities performed by juveniles in the nation. The Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, and the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention are both part of the country's Justice Department and are responsible for compiling and creating statistical data on juvenile crime. The FBI creates tables filled with information on crime by juveniles each year and places it into their Uniform Crime Report. This report is created with three specific goals in mind, which help law enforcement to attain criminal information. The report catalogs the extent to which serious crimes are performed, records the total volume a crime is committed, and finally measures the amount of law enforcement in a given area. The tables included in the FBI's Uniform Crime Report are divided into three categories of age: under 15, under 18, and 18 and over. This helps to organize criminals, making it easier for law enforcement to trace juveniles. Additionally, the tables are helpful because they separate criminal acts based on offense charged. Some of the most common offenses charged are murder, non-negligent manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson. Arrests are made by specific criminal acts, and the 8 listed above are further separated into two groups. The two groups are violent crimes and property crimes. Murder, non-negligent manslaughter, forcible rape, robbery, and aggravated assault are all offenses categorized as violent crimes, while burglary, larceny, theft, motor vehicle theft, and arson are grouped under property crimes committed by juvenile delinquents. The use of the Uniform Crime Report assists law enforcement and other government officials at finding the exact percentage of juveniles who have committed violent and property crimes. The FBI's Uniform Crime Program defines and categorizes juveniles as anyone under the age of 18 years old, regardless of individual state definitions of juvenile. In summary, official sources of juvenile crime, like the FBI's Uniform Crime Program, are organized parts of the federal government specifically designed to assist law enforcement when dealing with juvenile delinquency. Thank you.
Chapter 2, the author talks about status offenses and gender delinquency. The author states that law-violating behaviors are status offenses and violations that are only applicable to juveniles. Status offenses also vary from state to state since they are violations such as school truancy and running away from home. Laws for the youth appeared more in the 20th century since the government states that they have the ultimate parental authority. Chapter 2 discusses how violations are divided between male and female. Male juveniles are arrested on average between 2 and 3 times more often than females. It also depends on the crime being committed. Even though males commit more crime, female crime has been increasing.
I will also be discussing the racial and ethnic factors in juvenile delinquency. So, racial groups is defined as something that applies to those minorities and corresponding majorities that are classified according to obvious physical differences. Racial groups include skin color, facial features, hair color, texture, etc. There are at least 4 races represented in the population of the United States. Whites are a majority, while blacks, Asian Pacific Islanders, American Indians, and Alaskan Natives are the minority. Racial backgrounds of juvenile delinquents have always been a significant part of law enforcement. This is because racial minorities do not always manifest the same level of delinquency involvement as do members of a dominant racial group. An example of this would be that blacks are disproportionately overrepresented in arrest statistics. The book quotes that black youths comprise only about 15% of the juvenile population. They account for over 1/2 of the arrests for violent offenses under 18 years of age. The book also quotes that white youths are more likely than black youths to be arrested for property crimes, accounting for almost 2/3 of all property crime arrests of persons under age 18. Acts of delinquency committed by American Indians or Asian Pacific Islander is generally insignificant. This is because their population number is so low compared to other racial groups in America. Ethnicity in the book is defined as differentiated from the dominant group on the basis of cultural rather than physical differences. People from hundreds of countries around the world have immigrated to the United States and have become Americanized. However, some individuals have retained their values and heritage. Delinquency also varies with ethnicity. There's a large ethnic minority that was not previously discussed. These would be Hispanics. The Hispanic population in the U.S. is large and is continuing to grow. The book quotes that official data indicated that Hispanic young people also account for a disproportionately larger share of juvenile arrests. Many social factors can negatively affect these minority groups, causing for higher delinquency rates for some over others. Now I'll be discussing about place and residence of arrest statistics. So arrests are higher in larger cities than in smaller ones and are the lowest in rural areas. Although arrest rates are higher in urban areas, the gap between these rates within suburban and rural communities are narrowing. This may be due to greater sensitivity towards law enforcement in these areas. And lastly, the book quotes that rural youths are more likely to be involved in less serious crimes and status offenses.
Alright, so I'll be doing textbook 1, chapter 2, juvenile court statistics. So in 1929, the Children's Bureau, which is the division of the U.S. Department of Labor, initiated the National Juvenile Court Statistical Reporting Program, which issued annual reports on cases of children processed through a sample of juvenile courts. Those reports included juveniles who violated state laws or municipal ordinances, children who were dependent or neglected and required special proceedings to determine custody or adoption permission for medical treatment and other miscellaneous conditions. In 1975, the Juvenile Court Statistical Reporting System was transferred to the National Center for Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention in the U.S. Department of Justice. Juvenile Court Statistical Reporting Program has had a 2 to 4 year time lag between the collection of data and the actual publication and presentation to the public of annual report. Even with the website, the time lag has not improved significantly. Mythology. So, cases of juveniles accused of law violating behavior can be referred to juvenile court intake by law enforcement agencies, and the law enforcement officers are the primary source of referral. Social agencies, schools, parents, probation officers, and victims. Juvenile courts operate a two-track system for processing delinquency cases. Court intake personnel make a decision to divert the matter away from the court system, operationalizing a less punitive approach. Usually the youth is released, often with a warning. Sometimes they're referred to another agency for counseling, voluntary community service, restitution program to compensate victims. More serious delinquency cases are assigned to formal track that begins with filing a petition, an affidavit, and other legal instruments. Petition cases are usually scheduled on the official juvenile court calendar, and then final court disposition may involve a fine, restitution, probation, institutionalization, some combination of all of those. And then findings. Courts with juvenile jurisdiction formally process approximately 1.6 million cases of juvenile delinquency, encompass juveniles charged with the 8 index offenses against persons and property. There is a 3-to-1 ratio, male to female, a majority of young people involved with juvenile courts. Status offense cases processed by juvenile courts fall into a very different pattern of male-female participation. Females are adjudicated for a little over 40% of all status offense cases. 45% of the cases involve truancy, and 60% involve runaway cases. White youths are in approximately 2/3 of all delinquency cases. They are petitioned to juvenile court for 59 to 70% of crimes against persons, property crimes, drug violations, and public order offenses. Sometimes delinquency cases are transferred to criminal court if the offense is especially serious and the offender is deemed to have adult responsibility. The transfers have increased dramatically since 1980.
Hello everyone, my name is Miguel and I got the part of the composite delinquent profile, typical or stereotypical, pages 43 to 47. Page 43. According to annual arrest statistics compiled by the FBI and the records of delinquency and status offense cases petitioned to juvenile courts, this composite juvenile delinquent is disproportionately male between 15 and 18 years of age, and although most likely to be white, has a disproportionate likelihood of being a member of a racial or ethnic minority. Juvenile offenders reflect a higher incidence of unstable home life because of parental separation, divorce, desertion, or death. Page 44. Arrest statistics. A decided advantage of the annual FBI crime report is that juvenile arrest data are now available for almost all cities and the uniform crime. Reports cover about 96% of the nation's population. Problems with the database on arrest. First, the number of arrests is a questionable index of crime and the delinquency because law enforcement motives, technique, and successes vary from time to time and place to place. Second problem with the UCR arrest statistics is that they tell us nothing about juvenile crime that is undetected. Page 45. The dark figure of crime and delinquency. Many violent and even more property crimes go unreported. These incidents are referred to as the dark figure of crime and delinquency. Some victims fail to report assaults and thefts because they feel that these are private matters or that police can or will do nothing about them. Page 46. Juvenile court statistics. Another problem with annual compilations of juvenile court data is the lack of representation from several states. A second factor affecting the validity and reliability of juvenile court statistics is apparently insurmountable problem of variation in definitions and coding categories for criminal offenses among data suppliers. A third dilemma confounding the use of juvenile court statistics center on the estimating procedures used by the National Center of Juvenile Justice in projecting from the samples. Page 47. Unofficial sources of delinquency information, reported studies. Some limitations of the FBI Uniform Crime Reports and the Juvenile Court Statistics and indices of the scope and nature of the national delinquency problem, especially the dark figure of delinquency, are overcome by self-report studies. Thank you.
Some limitations of the FBI Uniform Crime Reports and the Juvenile Court Statistics are overcome by self-report studies. Rather than rely on official reports of arrests and court dispositions, many researchers draw a sample of various populations and directly inquire through survey questionnaires or interviews about respondents' previous delinquent behavior. It is designed to reveal and measure undetected and unreported instances of juvenile delinquency. Self-report studies in the United States and all around the world consistently show that delinquent behavior is far more common than is indicated by official data. Findings from repeated self-report studies can be generalized to apply to the entire population. Critics of self-reports question the honesty of respondents, but falsifications will offset each other within a large sample.
Self-report studies continued. The official data tends to be reflected more on the serious offenses, while self-report studies tend to measure much more common and less serious types of behavior. The idea that official and self-report studies produce discrepant results with respect to sex, race, and social class is not real due to the two methods tapping different domains of behavior. Victimization surveys. Victimization surveys is another useful source of juvenile delinquency info, which is conducted by the U.S. Department of Justice and private researchers, and it focuses on victims and their recollections of crimes, circumstances, and offenders. Variables include approximate age, sex, race, and other demographic characteristics of assailants and victims. The National Crime Victim Surveys measures victimizations of individuals 12 and over. NCVS focuses on personal crimes of rape, robbery, assault, and larceny, and household crimes of burglary, larceny, and motor vehicle theft. This data can be found at the website of the National Archive of Criminal Justice Data. And like self-report studies, victimization surveys have the advantage over arrest and juvenile court stats when it comes to estimating the extent of unreported crimes, especially when victims can respond anonymously. Researchers and law enforcement believe that there are a vast number of offenses that are not brought to the attention of police. For example, forcible rape is grossly underreported due to the embarrassment of reporting and giving details of experience to the police in open court. About half of all crimes are reported to the police. Teens are more than twice as likely as adults to be victims of rape, robbery, assault, and crimes of violence. Example, 60 of every 1,000 teens are victims compared to 27 of every 1,000 adults. Teen victims of personal crimes are least likely to report crimes to the police. There are two criticisms, which are the limitation of victimization data, that the victims are the only source of info. The second is that there's a serious list of crimes that are excluded. For example, murder, kidnapping, forgery, DUI of drugs. Status offenses are seldom included on victim questionnaires.
The magnitude and trends of juvenile delinquency. Social scientists, criminologists, law enforcement officers, and others are trying to measure crime and delinquency may agree with Mark Twain. There are three kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. Data collected over the years present a clear pattern of juvenile delinquency. American young people account for a large, disproportionate share of the national crime problem. U.S. juvenile delinquency crimes slowed down in 1990. From 2000 to 2009, arrests of the youth declined by 15% and property crimes declined over 20%. Forcible rape, vehicle theft, and arson down over 30%. Only categories that went up was robbery by 18%. Some say more vigilant law enforcement and social programs aimed at youth has declined, but more research is needed. Despite the decline in youth offenses, over 1.5 million persons under the age of 18 are arrested each year, and the first offense is getting younger.